He even went so far as to change into his jammies in the restroom. This has been his habit ever since I met him. Even after SX, which is something we do in secret, but it doesn't bother me since I know it's what comforts him. He'll change back into his clothes right away, and only then will we snuggle or do anything else again. I'm trying to let you know that I understand how uncomfortable he is with his scars, but I'm okay with it. I am aware that he feels self-conscious about his scars, and during our friendship, I shielded him fiercely by always changing the topic anytime his scars were brought up. He coughed out. My brother-in-law and my lover Sarah also began to cry. My deepest apologies, she cried out. This was not what we had anticipated. Unfortunately, I found their explanations intolerable, ignoring their cries for me to return. I swiftly made my way to my vehicle. My phone began to ring as I drove away. My mom came last, followed by Sarah and Tom. I paid them no mind. Upon returning home, I gathered a bag containing necessary clothing and items. I messaged Tom. That's it. Stay away from me from now on. Always thanked me for this. I've never asked him to show me, and I never would. I don't believe his scars are unsightly or judge them. Because some of his dad's burned scars are impossible to hide, one of them covers half of his face, and because I have never once criticized or even thought his dad's wounds were unsettling, I assumed he knew I wouldn't judge him. He's a really attractive man. They both are, which is why his response and his charges of this are so perplexing to me. As a nurse, I have inconsistent shifts that allow me to arrive home at various times of the day, including 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. I headed straight to the shower. I was so tired that I had put myself into airplane mode. As soon as I opened my next move was to silence my phone and go. A hotel room in a neighboring city is where I am composing this. What should I do next? I have no idea. I will be unable to attend the wedding at this time, even though it is just a few days away. My sister's infidelity has severed our connection, and I fear it will never mend. Everything has been flipped upside down for me. I was absolutely correct in my suspicions, yet everyone treated me like I was insane for having them. After this, I will never trust anyone again. So, Reddit, I would greatly appreciate any guidance on how to proceed from this point onwards. Refresh the memory. My sister Sarah's encounter with my now ex-boyfriend came as a shock. Hello, Tom 4. Bathroom door. He started changing. I observed his wounds. I'll admit that I was having an OSHT moment and staring at them because I knew I effed up, not because I thought they were gross. We've been dating for almost a year now. My parents are toxic and heavily religious, so I had to move in with him a while back after I came out to them and informed them I was dating someone else. I therefore haven't lived in an apartment with a roommate before. He lost it and yelled at me to leave. Take note, until now, Dad had never yelled at me. He did occasionally get into tiny arguments and spats with me, but he never yelled. When I closed the door, he fell silent. After about 20 to 30 minutes of pacing the kitchen, several days I was completely disoriented and unable to make sense of what had transpired. Both of their numbers, along with my parents, were constantly popping up on my phone, but I just couldn't bring myself to answer. I came to the realization that Mark, Sarah's fiancé, was the one person who should have known the truth. I contacted him with a heavy heart. There was obvious perplexion in Mark's voice when he responded. My goodness, what the hey? According to Sarah, you vanished and refused to communicate with anyone. I drew a long breath and spilled the beans to him. After laying out my original suspicions and the dismissal of my concerns by others, I went on to describe what I had. He hurriedly walked past me and attempted to flee when I intervened. He was furious, yelling at me, asking me if I did it on purpose, and that he thought I would know how to knock by now. I could see how red his eyes were, so I tried not to cry while I tried to explain. I was aware of his tears. I was at a loss for words. I attempted to convey that I was, but all I could do was cry uncontrollably. However, he refused to listen and walked away without providing his destination. I'm devastated. An hour ago, he sent me a single text message. I refuse to return home. We can discuss our connection tomorrow. I replied to him right away, inquiring as to what it meant, and I watched the little text incoming bubble come and go for a few. Scene in my parents' yard. Mark listened quietly while I spoke, breaking his silence only to make a noise now and then. There was a considerable pause when I finished. Mark finally spoke, his voice calm and collected. The information you shared is greatly appreciated. Allow me a moment to consider this. Before ending the call, that was his only statement. I couldn't help but stare at my phone, consumed by curiosity about his potential actions with this information. Mark and my family remained silent as the wedding day drew near. By the time Sarah ceased attempting to get in touch with me, I thought she had gotten Mark to forgive her. It sickened me to think that she would get away with it, that her life would be minutes before he texted back. I'm not sure what to do, as if it were simple, about whether we should continue together. I'm in love with him. My 8-year best pal. What on earth should I do? I cherish him. Without him, I can't fathom my life. To me, his father is like a father. If he throws me out, I have nowhere to go. I can't lose him above anything. I'd rather lose him than have to go through the process of coming out again. What can I do to please him? How do I apologize to him and assure him that it was never my intention to cause him discomfort? Edit, I should clarify, because it got me thinking. Because of his scars, he was perfect while mine was in shambles. The wedding was not on my agenda. Knowing what Sarah had done, the prospect of seeing her walk down the aisle was too much for me to handle. But I had other plans for the day. I wanted to be alone and think about how to fix my life. Unfortunately, my cousin Emma called me on the wedding night. She spoke in a low, enthusiastic tone. "This is unbelievable, you have no idea what has transpired." Perplexed, I inquired as to her meaning. Emma started telling her tale. So initially, it appeared like teased. One of his biggest middle school bullies would routinely sniff the air before he entered a classroom and yell, You guys smell that it has a burning bacon smell to it." By middle school, he had gained a little weight. He laughed every time he walked into a room. Furthermore, several of our male acquaintances would comment, "Hey, that looks like Deadpool's skin," in passing glances. They were making a terrible effort to be kind, which is why I'm so fiercely defensive of anyone who brings it up. His relatives consistently highlighted that his inner beauty outweighed his outward appearance. As they said, really, WTF. He has also spoken about having a horrible ex-girlfriend who was troubled by his scars. Everything was fine. As Mark stood at the altar, Sarah radiated beauty in her gown. But when the vows were about to be exchanged, Mark stood up and announced something. As Emma went on, my pulse began to race. Everyone was informed by Mark that he was unable to proceed with the wedding. The idea of marrying someone who would wreck her sister's life by betraying her and getting entangled with her lover was too much for him. The color paled out of Sarah's face. "Please understand that I feel it is important for you to be aware of the true reason your daughter has been avoiding you," Mark remarked to your parents. Then Emma continued by describing the mayhem that broke out. A flood of tears poured down Sarah's face. The visitors began whispering to each other, and my parents, in the past. But she never dug too much into it. I'm beginning to wonder if this is the source of his overreaction and his idea of breaking up. They're incredibly helpful. I'm making mental notes about all the advice about how to tackle this. Update. I attempted to update this yesterday, but I was unable to do so in a timely manner. I intended to hold out, but I got a DM from someone saying I should just post the update here. Now let's get started. I read all of your comments, some of which I was unable to respond to, but many of them were really insightful. For the most part, they were in agreement. Get him to start therapy and let expressions change to one of shock and confusion. Sarah was left sobbing at the altar as Mark allegedly left the chapel. Emma remarked that it felt like she was in a movie. The shock hasn't worn off yet. Sarah is being uncooperative while your parents try to get her tale straight. My mind was blown. On one hand, I was relieved that the truth had been revealed. On the other, I felt terrible about the suffering this would inflict on my loved ones. Feeling all right? Upon my inaction, Emma inquired. I responded honestly, I really don't know. This is the last thing I expected. I spoke with Emma for a little longer before hanging up and sitting in quiet contemplation, attempting to make sense of things. We now knew the truth, but how much did it hurt? I had severed ties with Tom and Sarah, and now my whole family was in disarray. The truth had emerged, but it wouldn't solve all my problems, I knew. The process of healing and reestablishing trust would take a long time. A tiny sigh of relief. Him know that I don't care about his scars. In addition, spoiler alert, I've arranged for a place to stay in case he kicked me out. That was not the case. I slept very little last night. And thank you, Utrizag, based on certain remarks. In an attempt to diffuse the situation, I chose to text him and tell him that I love him and don't care about his scars. That elicited no response from him, but the next morning he returned. I began our hours-long conversation by expressing I was sorry for interrupting him, and that I didn't mean to. He apologized for ranting and acknowledged that he knew that. I proposed that we install locks on our doors, and he appeared pleased with my suggestion. I texted him to get things straight and to find out if it was because of his ex-girlfriend or something else. She basically asked if it was nevertheless, had not been hand over me since this entire situation started. Now that the burden of whispered facts has been lifted, I can finally begin to go forward. I am uncertain about what will happen next. Even though I know I'll have to confront my family at some point, I'm just living day to day at the moment. If nothing else, I've learned that it's crucial to follow my gut and defend my independence, no matter how much people try to discredit me. I am grateful to everyone who stood by me during this difficult time. Your words of support meant the world to me. Remember to listen to your intuition and not allow anyone to gaslight you into questioning your own senses if you find yourself in a similar circumstance. Reason she ended their relationship. He pulled off his shirt in front of her and confessed that he felt she didn't mind his scars. I now have a newfound loathing for her since she chose to gasp and start making a big deal about how he cheated on her and made it sound like the scars weren't that awful before breaking up with him. He claimed to be aware that it wasn't an excuse, but he freaked out when his mind automatically went to that. He instantly answered no, clarifying that he was only trying to offer me an excuse if I wanted it. When I questioned if he wanted to break up, he was simply trying to find an excuse. I felt relieved when I told you. He questioned why I was staring if I wasn't repulsed. And I admitted that, even though I knew I messed up, I experienced an OSHT panic attack. He felt terrible and said he was sorry for causing me such discomfort in our house. His words, "Our home always give me a serotonin rush." Additionally, he promised to strive to become more at ease with his scar. That's when I recommended getting help. When I pointed out that the way he wants us to live is unhealthy, and that we can have locks and a knock before entering policy, he immediately became defensive and claimed that he had already tried treatment and that it had not worked very well. However, it was unjust of him to expect me to never see him in his underwear. It was me feeding into his growing insecurities. He dismissed these arguments, claiming that nothing would change. The first attempt at it failed. Why would it function at this time? I brought up the fact that he nearly ended a 9-year relationship because I happened to walk in on him. He attempted to explain that locks would prevent me from entering on him in the future. Not him ending the relationship, as I mentioned. But I also don't want you to be overly cautious. I want you to feel at ease around me. I'm asking for your trust. I'm going to text his dad to make sure he does this in a few days. He reluctantly agreed to talk to his dad about the therapist he saw and was going to visit them. I even suggested something that other people had mentioned, like taking a couples counseling session or getting tattoos. And all he did was stare. He posed a question along the lines of, "Why are you so interested in my scars? You used to not give a damn." Not combative or nasty, just sincere bewilderment. I said, "I thought you would show me on your own when you were ready, but I don't know about that anymore," with an embarrassed laugh. "I don't want you to feel as though you have to conceal your wounds from me, baby, even though I adore you. Furthermore, I don't want you to worry about me ignoring your scars and ending our relationship. I adore every aspect of you, including your wounds." This was not the first time during the conversation that he broke down in tears. He was crying uncontrollably on both ends, and I consoled him. He apologized and stated he didn't want me to feel anxious in our house. It was a win-win situation for me for the time being, because he was far more receptive to couples counseling than individual treatment. We continued our conversation about the future, and I questioned him about if he ever imagined that I would feel at ease viewing his scars. He stated that he is not yet ready, but he wants to show me. Considering that he had consented to couples counseling and therapy, I was glad to accept that. I'm so happy for him. Again, this was a really long discussion, which I've described here. We both really, truly needed to sleep and have dinner. And as of right now, as he goes to work, I'm researching couple therapists. In summary, we are moving toward a brighter future where I will be able to see his scars. I'm not going to show him this post because he doesn't deserve to read it for a fair analysis, especially after reading some really harsh comments. Man has handled many of my breakdowns, Lord knows. I appreciate all of your advice and help. Thank you. All of the hug awards brightened my day. Story number 3. Op's violent husband nearly killed her after she spoke with a coworker. For 2 years, my 31F spouse 32M cheated on me. But each time he makes a new acquaintance, he assumes I'm into them, or that we're having sex. I hugged his friend after assisting his wife give birth at home, and his friend was trying to say thank you, so that's why he gave me a concussion. We were in their house, so I was being courteous, even though I didn't want to give the guy a hug. I recently started working at a new restaurant, and one of my coworkers is highly flirtatious and dating a female employee. On Mondays when I work, we have karaoke nights. My coworker usually shows up and sings a lot, while intoxicated. My spouse believes this guy is attention-seeking, so I don't talk to him, or give him any recognition. At karaoke, I performed a song, and one of my coworkers made a comment. When I ask my husband to set boundaries with women, he responds that I don't. This has now made my husband very angry. The previous day, his pal was several hours late for their meetup. I was by myself at home tidying up and listening to music. I was cleaning and didn't have my phone, so I didn't realize my spouse had phoned me 10 times. I also didn't get a call from my pal. He accused me of inviting his friend over and having sex with him when I returned his final call. Even our homeless friend who used drugs was talking to me about how he was sleeping with another man's wife while my husband was right there, picking everything up. I acknowledged that the conversation was inappropriate and Promised not to speak with him alone after he became upset with me. One night, meth guy made dinner. I told him it was excellent, because I really wanted him to stop talking because he was being so insecure about his cooking. There was violence. I got punished for a week, and I stated how great my husband's cuisine is. We got into a fight today over what happened with the coworker last night. I tried to climb in the car to stop him, but he insisted on going. He warned me. He was going to give me a concussion and kill me when he got in the car. He began to beat me, and I noticed blood all over both of us. He attempted to strangle me so badly that I was unable to even scream. Since my landlord lives on the property, I yelled for her assistance as I opened the car door. He apologized and claimed he didn't like having restrictions established for him after she helped us both to calm down. I requested that he set limits with women. I genuinely want to know if anyone has ever been with someone who is really traumatized. He was an African child refugee. He doesn't get along well with his mother. She doesn't display any affection. She stole all of his siblings' money and made him and them hungry to buy gold jewelry. He was in a relationship with a physically abusive and alcoholic woman who is 20 years his senior and has 7 children. She viciously denigrated him and cheated on him the entire time. I am really sympathetic to him. I have witnessed his growth, and I am pleased with the progress he has made. However, other things like his insecurity do not change quickly enough for me to feel safe at all. My life was difficult. I was beaten and abused a lot when I was little. As I became older, I experienced numerous druggy incidents and assaults. During my teenage years, I was placed in lockdown facilities due to my parents' belief that I was mentally ill, based on the advice of therapists. In spite of everything, I have a really upbeat and hopeful outlook on life. During the lockdowns, I discovered how to heal myself and how to find freedom within myself when I had nothing. I've always had psychological awareness and intelligence, which has allowed me to help others, help myself, and comprehend what's going through people's hearts. It has worn me down, but I see the real me in him, the one who is caged by all of his misery and longs to be free. I was reduced to a shell of a person until recently as a result of his infidelity. I've been getting back on my feet, but I feel that men are drawn to me more now that I have more energy. And even though I have never deceived him in such a way, and I never will, my spouse is now beginning to show signs of paranoia and insecurity again. However, everything you see confirms your suspicions when you're paranoid. I suppose I'm just curious. Has anyone ever been with someone who was so traumatized that they required time to heal? I realize that people are complicated, and I can handle a lot. I'm not looking for a flawless person. I appreciate you taking the time. Relevant remarks from Uthasanandwich: you have a 750% increased chance of being murdered by your partner after they pick you for the first time. The best indicator that he will kill you is if he chokes you. Reaction from AP: oh my god. The number of times this guy has choked me is beyond me. I only truly fear for my life during that moment. Revision 3 months later. I'm hoping the link functions. I've never attempted an update before. I truly appreciate all of the direct advice that I have received. He hasn't been seen in a month. The only way I could convince him to get out of there quickly was to let him keep the automobile. My relatives arrived. It was the longest period of time we had not seen one another. For the previous year, he made us despise one another. It was, therefore, quite pleasant for all of us to get back in touch and for me to recall who I am. I enjoy my life. And they helped me buy a car. That's the most important thing. Really, wow. Life is incredible. Being able to control my life and be fearless makes me incredibly joyful. Not to be so full of resentment and suspicion. I began to change into the kind of person I never wanted to date. My personal violence and rage. Things had gotten so codependent that I felt the only way out was to let him unalive me. I was so devoted to him after all of his infidelity that I wanted him to make things right. On the other hand, to put it more calmly, I wasn't used to anything like that in my previous relationships. I've never understood why people continue to live in this kind of torment. But now I understand. Freedom awaits anyone else who may be experiencing feelings of being stuck. Although it hurts, things improve far more quickly than you would have thought if you had persevered through it. My life is so great right now, it's impossible to put into words. I appreciate all of your help, kind comments, and candor. Being alive makes me very happy. Some word of caution from Redditors. The best update ever for StickGirl7 is that he will try to return, he will apologize, he will say that he is healed, he will talk about the good times and memories, don't honor them, keep moving, don't look back, don't get stuck staring in the rearview mirror, you're better off. He will contact you, a moment of weakness can set off everything, stay strong, you're so proud of yourself. Op states that she is receiving therapy. I'm grateful. I've visited a couple other therapists in addition to returning to my trauma therapist. I have always taken a road trip to get away.